Welcome back in. Today we're talking about a very important concept in rope flow, cardinal directions and changing your orientation. Your rope flow practice is going to be comprised of three elements: the techniques that you use to swing the rope, your footwork, locomotion, moving forwards, backwards, sideways, and then finally, your awareness of where you are in space, your ability to rotate and navigate that movement without the rope hitting you. So, again, those three pieces are your rope techniques, your footwork, and your spatial awareness. So far, we've been focusing mainly on techniques, building your vocabulary, and adding in a little bit of basic footwork. And in today's lesson, we're going to unpack this concept of cardinal directions to give you a framework for developing this spatial awareness, understanding where you and the rope are in space as you're flowing. The rope is going to stay moving in a consistent way. The cardinal directions pertain to which way you're oriented. When I'm facing the camera, we'll call that facing north. I start out in an overhand figure eight, and then I can turn my body 90 degrees to face either east or west. My overhand figure eight becomes a front propeller. So notice here how the rope is continuing to move in a consistent way. It stays in the same plane of motion. What changes is the direction that I'm facing. Once we get the rope moving, we want to be very intentional about keeping it in a specific plane so that we don't hit ourselves. By starting out your practice making clean 90-degree turns, being very distinct about which direction you're facing, you're going to be less likely to clip yourself with the rope. Now I'm facing south. The rope is moving the same way, but I went from an overhand pattern facing north, a propeller pattern facing east, and then an underhand pattern while facing south. So with this awareness and understanding of which direction you're facing, you have the ability to then dial in the timing of when you make those pivot turns, changing your orientation, but keeping the momentum of the rope going. Now, as a side note, it may go without saying, but when we talk about the cardinal directions, it's a subjective reference point. You may not actually be facing true north. So far in our rope flow vocabulary, we've got overhand and underhand figure eights and matadors that work really well when we're oriented north or south, and we've got propellers and dragon rolls that work really well when we're oriented east and west. In previous videos, we've already touched on integrating these techniques as we add in pivot steps. And hopefully this concept of the cardinal directions just gives you a stronger mental framework for understanding where you are in space and how to transition between these techniques. In this case, we're smoothly transitioning from facing north in an overhand figure eight pattern to facing east or west in a dragon roll. In the figure eight, your hands are close, probably stacked on top of one another. As you pivot to face east or west, you open your hands for the dragon roll. As we've talked about before, you can always lean on the front propeller swing. As you become more skilled, you'll have the timing to open your hands and transition seamlessly into the dragon roll. The cardinal directions are a very simple concept that you'll want to keep in your mind as you're practicing to continue getting used to constantly changing your orientation in space. Ultimately, this is going to give you more freedom in your flow. First step is feeling where you're oriented in space. To do this, it can be helpful to have a visual reference point to signify north. Practice making clean 90-degree turns, changing your orientation without interrupting the rope. Your challenge is to guide the rope into the next technique without breaking the plane of motion. If the rope begins to drift out of alignment or out of the plane that it's been swinging in, it's likely going to clip you. Ultimately, you're trying to become very skilled at changing which direction you're facing while staying in the center of the compass. When this happens, the rope is moving around you. It's orbiting you without crashing into you. In time, your skill level is going to grow. You're going to gain an intuitive understanding of where the rope is in space in relation to your body. The way that you're going to develop this intuition is by keeping it simple and abiding by the concept of cardinal directions. I recommend dedicating some practice to these seamless 360-degree turns, keeping it very simple with the figure eight and front propeller. You can start very slowly, take your time, and pause after each 90-degree turn, but gradually become smoother and smoother. It's okay if you're not 100% crystal clear on cardinal directions just yet. I know that with practice, this concept is going to make more and more sense. Just keep it in your mind, stay consistent, and in time your flow will grow. Have fun, and I'll see you in the next video.